Hi, I'm Brienne, and I'm going to give you some tips on painting in gouache today. I love to use gouache when I am out traveling especially, and I want to keep things light. Here is my gouache kit, and I'm going to go over all the tools that I use. Also, I'll be doing a demonstration so I can show you how I like to paint in gouache and the things that I like to think of. So first, we're going to go over my toolkit so that you can see all my materials, and then we'll get painting.
So this is my gouache bag, and there's nothing special about the bag itself, but I have my papers in the back, which I like to use watercolor paper, hot press, and specifically for gouache. Then I have this pencil case, which I just got off of Amazon. Nothing special, just holds my pencils and brushes. Then I have this bag full of my extra gouache paints, which I'll go over in a little bit. Then I have tape, which masking tape, and this is for taping my paper on the board. And then I have a container of water and a squirt bottle. Always have a squirt bottle with gouache especially. And then here is the palette and water container. So for my brushes and pencil, everything fits into this pencil case. And I have a mechanical pencil, nothing too special about it. It's 0.9 millimeter and 2B lead. That's the main point, with of course kneaded eraser. Then the brushes I use are just watercolor brushes. They're travel brushes, so that they're small enough to fit into the case, but other than that, nothing really special about them. I have flat and round, which I usually like the flats. Okay, then I tape my paper to the board. That's what I have the tape for. I like the white edge. That probably comes from my watercolor background. So my palette just is connected to the water container. So you can open up the water container, pour water inside, and then the palette itself, which I just got off of Amazon. And again, I just looked up gouache palettes. I happen to like that there wasn't a lot of wells. I don't need a lot. And it has a silicone seal on it. These are my paints, and they're Holbein gouache for the most part. I'm not going to go over all of these, but there's basically a warm and cool red, yellow, and blue, and then of course titanium white. That's very important. Plus a couple other neutralizers, which I like. I'm going to draw this out, and I always, when I'm going to prepare for a gouache painting, I draw out the subject, and here we'll go into painting. I usually start off with the sky, and here I've got some blue with a little bit of white. Now this ends up being way too dark, but that's okay. That's why gouache is nice and forgivable. I start off with water. That's the medium so that you can help paint it smoothly, right? Then I start by bringing in the color that's on the roof. I just kind of do average base colors, kind of like a block in I would with oil. Here I'm doing the grays on the side of the building, and I'm changing up my grays to being warm to cool, also making sure I add a little white in there too, because I don't want the grays to end up being too dark. But I have, I use red, yellow, and blue, a combination of that, just like I would in watercolor, so that I can control the grays, because some portions will be cooler than others with respect to each other. Now, also, I control the value within the shadow by of course, using white to adjust, make things lighter. And then so within the shadow area, I have various values and colors. Underneath that overhang, there's these warm, warm shadows. So that's what I'm picking up on. And then I have this cast shadow from one of the palm trees. So I'm pretty much doing one big mass. Some darker as I build up the painting. I'm really just trying to block in the basic values. And adjusting the colors as I go. What I did notice though is once I put that shadow down, that sky was way too dark in comparison. So that's why I ended up going over the whole sky with a lot more white, and then still having it cool and then warming it up as it gets towards the horizon and lightening it. And I just keep going over it and feathering it to try to get a smooth transition, or as smooth as possible. Again, it's a study, but the value is much better. That's what I mean about gouache being forgiving. Then I'm going to come and get the shapes of the rocks. And again, looking at light, middle, and dark values, adjusting the colors as I go. How do I adjust the colors? Again, combinations of red, yellow, and blue. Now I'm going to paint around the boat, and I'm going to paint the water. And what I'm noticing in the water from the reference photo is those various striations and gradations of the water. So I'm changing up the hue and the value of the water as I come forward. So overall, you know, blue cool colors, but then I'm bringing in some of the warm tones that I'm picking up and seeing within the water. Now, if it gets hard to paint, as you can see, sometimes gouache, it dries so fast. So you just grab a little bit of water and that helps it to paint more easily. So water is the medium, basically. Then I'm going to drop in some of these reflections just to give it a base value for the reflections, and changing up the colors again as I see them. And then I'm going to start bringing in the darks of some of those palm trees. So I'm starting off with darks, and I'll bring in some lighter values later. Just kind of playing with the shapes of the different palms, trying to connect as many shapes as possible, and varying the green mixtures as I go, which is just, again, probably I started with the cypress green and then varied it with different colors. Now I'm going to bring in the trunks of those palms with a round brush, and again using water to help me if the paint is too thick and hard to paint with. So just use a little more water. Then I'm going to, so I had left the white of the paper, but I don't want it that white of the paper. So I take some of the titanium white and add a little warm of the Naples yellow into that. And that's going to be the sunlit portion of the building. So I'm building up those shapes, but I go back and forth between the shadow shapes and then the sunlit shapes. And I'm going back and forth as I see the form. Then I can drop in some of the dark areas which is going to pull out some of the detail and also help the shadow feel more transparent and feel more like a middle value once I start to drop in some of those dark shapes. And then same thing I do with in the rocks. So the rocks, I'm going to keep going back and forth between picking out the darks that I see, especially there along the bottom. And then I'm going to come back in with middle values and adjusting those shadow shapes. And I'll come back with some light shapes. And so it's kind of like an oil where you kind of go back and forth. Now I go into the boat. And this is where gouache is just so much more immediate because you can kind of go back and forth like this. Also, things are drying. So unlike oil, where they don't dry, you can keep painting right on top and it's much quicker. So here I'm just doing in little details of the boat. So I zoomed in for you and just picking out a few lights and then of course picking out some darks and different things to indicate the shape of the boat. And then when I step back and I just looked at the thing as the painting as a whole, I noticed that the reflection needed to be a little darker. And then I'll drop in the reflection of the boat, the mast of the boat. And then that's it. That's the painting. All right, that's the end of the demo. Let's see how it looks. Okay, there. Okay, cute little gouache study. And I don't know, that's the kind of thing I was playing with. So it was so much fun. And this was fun to do on site because I could keep things small. As you could see, things dried quicker. So I could keep going in. I could play with the different temperature shifts in here. And the key thing to remember, because yes, gouache does dry darker. And so in the lighter areas, you need to use more white than you would think. And so just keep that in mind. Thank you for watching. I hope that this helps you give you the confidence to try gouache painting. Next time you go travel, take a little kit and have fun with it. If you would like to learn more from me and watch more demonstration videos, please visit my website at travelingcolorsstudio.com. Also, please like and subscribe to my channel for more art tips and tutorials. Thanks and happy painting!